Welcome to 2024 Legacy Driven Marriages. Let's go, Steph.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Man, this is the January 2nd episode, and this is going to be so good today. This is one of my jams, one of my favorite things to talk about. Goals, how we set goals, asking ourselves the what if questions, and really believing that we can achieve the things that we set out to do. But I want to ask you a question today to start. What if you prioritize your marriage and relationship in 2024? What if your number one goal for the year was to create a stronger marriage? Who would benefit from that? What would your life look like by the end of 2024? And what would your family dynamic be? Look, guys, welcome to Legacy Driven Marriages podcast episode number 49, which is still crazy for me to think. I'm here with my partner in crime, Stephanie McKinley.
Speaking of goals, we're about to reach almost our 50th episode, which that was a big goal for us at the start of last year, was that we wanted to be consistent and have a podcast every week of last year. Once we started in the middle of February, but so far we have stuck to that. We did take a little 2-week hiatus just for Christmas, but beyond that, we stuck to our goal of reaching out to you guys every week last year, and we plan on continuing that this year. So
yeah, absolutely. And look, guys, like we love that you guys are here. So make sure that you're hitting that subscribe button if you're here for the first time so that you don't miss an episode. Like Stephanie said, one thing we really pride ourselves on is being consistent and showing up. Look, we know marriage is hard. We know relationships are tough. We know sometimes you're giving it all. Sometimes you're not getting anything in return, and vice versa. But we also know what creating a strong and powerful marriage can feel like, can be like, can act like, and the results that gives you in your life. And we know that because we have been in those winter seasons in our marriage, and we have been in this summer season of our marriage like we are right now, just truly living our best life. And so we really want to hit home today with you guys and talk about being super intentional in your marriage in 2024 and building some goals. And it's interesting, Steph, because I think about this. I don't know that I would have even really done this year around our own marriage. But since we do this podcast, since we've been going to some workshops just to strengthen our own marriage, it's really made me more aware of building goals around our relationship, around our marriage, because let's be real, it's so easy to regress in your marriage because life is putting a lot of pressure on us all at once. We hear people talk about their spiritual goals. People talk about their financial goals. People talk about their personal goals, their physical goals. I mean, you got a goal for everything that you want, but nobody ever talks about making a relationship goal individually. Like, what are you going to contribute to the relationship? Where do you want to see the relationship? And then building goals as a couple in order to propel your relationship and make it be the best and strongest that it can be.
Yeah, I gotta say, actually love that Walt came up with the idea for this episode today. And honestly, this is one of his strengths. He's always been a very goal-oriented person. And so this is strong suit for him. To be honest with you guys, this is not my strong suit. I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to relate to all you out there who are like me, that we kind of let life take us sometimes, and we kind of just go with the flow. We don't always set goals, or, I have the same one every year. I always have an exercise, like eat healthy. That's always my New Year's resolution. That's always
Good Lord.
my goal
For most of us.
I feel like that's the only one that I can say I set every year. Last year was one of the first years that I actually we set goals for this podcast and things we wanted to accomplish with that. And I told Walt I went back because it was the first time I actually wrote a list and wrote it down, and I came across it the other day, and we had done everything on that list that we set out to do for the podcast. And I got to be honest, that health and exercise goal was on there. And once again, I did not fulfill that one.
We did pretty good at the beginning.
Yeah. We started off strong, and it didn't last. but I'm proud to say we did accomplish everything we set to. And I set some goals for just getting out of my comfort zone, doing things that were uncomfortable for me to help me grow. And I did all those things. So that have to say I was really proud of myself, and it felt awesome to attain some of those things. And so I'm a little bit more sold on the writing your goals down, I think is pretty powerful. And because once you write them, it's like then they kind of stick in your mind more, and it stays in your mind that you wrote that. So you feel more committed to having to do it, I think. Um, for me, I have to say, I feel like that worked. I'm not, like I said, I've not been big in the past on doing that. And I love that Walt had this idea for this today to talk about. He's right. We never talk about goals for our relationship though. And how important is that? And why, we wonder why our relationships are struggling or failing. It's because we don't put the same effort and priority on it that we do on work and all these other things. Everybody has like their work goals or their health goals or their, like he said, financial goals or even spiritual goals, but we don't really prioritize or make goals for our relationship. And why don't we do that? I really had to, it kind of took me a minute to sit back and say, what, we don't. And why don't we prioritize that? We've been talking about how we feel like your marriage relationship is the most important relationship. So why don't we treat it that way?
Yeah, it's like outside your relationship with God, your next most important relationship, the thing that's going to build the strength for the rest, everything else you do in your life, for how you raise your children, to how you behave and act and react at work, to your friendships that you create, to even your success financially. The second most important relationship outside of God is your relationship to your spouse. And
Mhm.
it's such a big miss. And you talked about it with all the different levels of goals that people set, because we don't have a goal for our relationship. The priority of what we see our relationship immediately goes to the bottom.
Mm.
But when you can prioritize your relationship, what you find is everything else will elevate. Think about, I know so many people who are multimillionaires, really successful businesses. They do extraordinarily well. A lot of them have been divorced.
Mm.
A lot of them personally feel miserable. And so we put this money on this pedestal all the time with how we think about goals. But most people who have money, if you sit back and you actually talk to them, are miserable because people want love, people want companionship, people want community above anything else. So if you can build the companionship and partnership and marriage with your spouse, and you can do that at a really high level, you'll find way more success in every other aspect of your life. So when we say prioritization, this needs to be
Mm.
at the extreme top of that list outside of your spiritual relationship with God. Your marriage should be number two that you prioritize above all else. Because at the end of the day, if you stripped everything else away, the love that you have with your partner, with your spouse, the way that they show up, because the way that you show up will be massively different and very dynamic in the way that you guys can support each other in this hard journey that we call life.
Yeah, I have to say when the only time I have to say the first time that I prioritized the relationship and really putting effort towards that was, we've talked about it a lot, when we got to like a really low
Right.
point and it was like almost the demise of the relationship. And then at that point, it was like, oh, I guess I should really start putting effort in. And then I made it a priority to actually focus on that. And guess what? When I did that, wow, there was such a
It's
huge
like a miracle.
change in the dynamic of our relationship after that. But that's the thing is we always kind of, it's like we treat it like we take it for granted. We just think it's always going to be there because we're married, we're committed now, so it's whatever. Like that that becomes like the low priority because it's like, oh, these other things will not work out or not take off if I don't put effort into them, but we don't view that relationship like that. We think, well, when we're married now, it's just going to be.
Mm.
And it's not. And if you learn anything from this podcast, it's that marriage is work. and it takes a lot of effort. And to have that successful marriage, just like anything else in your life that you want to be successful, it takes prioritizing it and it takes work and effort, just like everything else in your life. And so it's no wonder a lot of us sit back and go, well, how did I get here? And, why is the relationship not working? Well, because you didn't prioritize it.
Or you have that shocking moment where one person says it's over and the other person's left reeling because where did this come from? No, it's a trickle effect that happens over time because you didn't prioritize your relationship, and both parties got to play a part of this. So again, as always, like, listen to this episode with your spouse because it's really important. But if not, like, you got to build your goals for yourself too, right? So we're not saying like just build relationship goals about where both of you guys want to be. You guys need to have individual goals for where you want your relationship to be at also, because both of you have different individual needs. And when I was focusing on what I wanted Stephanie's goals to be for our relationship, let me say that again. When I said I was focused on what I wanted Stephanie's goals to be for our relationship, not how I can contribute to the relationship. All I did was get filled with resentment about how she wasn't meeting my needs and wants. Never once did I stop in my anger and pain and frustration and resentment to say, am I really meeting any of hers? And if I'm not, well, maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe that's not why she's not meeting some of mine. And so it really just starts with that self-awareness of, why do we even want to create these goals? Look, guys, the goal, you have to set the vision for what you want in your life. I just spoke with somebody 2 days ago and I said, what do you want your relationship to look like? And they told me, they said, well, I don't really know. And I said, then you're going to keep getting what you got. Because if you're not willing to sit back and think, what does great in my relationship look like? What is that vision for where I think that we can go in our relationship look like? You can't start to build the executables, the how to's, and we're going to get to that next and how to do that. You can't build the how to's on how you're going to help facilitate getting your relationship to the point where you want it. So it all starts with building the vision. And that doesn't happen most of the time with a switch.
Mm-mm.
You don't say, what do I want our relationship to look like? Pow, there it is. You'll get some idea, but you need to really sit and think, what does a great marriage look like to me? What does a great marriage look like to Stephanie individually? And then as a couple, where do those things marry up with each other that we can work on together? We're still going to have our individual contributions. Now we're going to have some collective contributions. You have to have these things when you build your goals. And it starts with that vision for the overall and the vision for how you're going to contribute to that. So when we're going through these how-to things and we're talking about where to focus, how to celebrate wins, I want you to think of it from the perspective of your marriage. But because we're going into 2024, these tools that we're going to talk about, you can still utilize to build your own relation or to build the best version of you too, not just the best version of your relationship. When you can get the best version of you matched with the best version of your relationship, you become a power couple, man. You become unstoppable. So it really does start individually. And then it works to being as a couple.
Yeah, I was going to say, so Walt and I we have a vision for, like, the reason we started the podcast, right, was because we knew what it was like to have a marriage that wasn't doing well and how much that affected everything else in our life when we weren't doing well. It showed up everywhere in our life. And we see so many other couples experiencing that same thing. And I don't know about you guys, but with anything in life, if you've been through something hard or painful, it hurts you and it's hard for you to see someone else go through what you went through and you felt in that place.
And that you can help prevent by giving them some wisdom and some lessons learned.
Right. So we see so many friends, family, God, talk to anyone. We know so many people who are hurting and struggling in their relationships, and it's painful, and you can see it. And you can see it affecting other parts of their life. And so it's hard when you know you've been in that place and you know you can get out of it, and you know if they just had the tools and they were aware, they could be in a totally different place and be living totally, in such a happier being, like we've seen couples too that have also been at that place and now are doing great and thriving.
Mm-hmm.
And we want that for everybody. And Walt and I were kind of talking about this earlier, that, we've seen even for ourselves, like he said at the beginning, kind of ask yourself those questions, like, what would it look like though if your relationship was thriving? How different would you be showing up in all the other, like, how would you be as a friend? How would you be at work? How would your children, how would you parent differently? It affects them. Like they watch you and they
Mm-hmm.
take in that stuff too. So many things are affected when your relationship's not doing well that you don't even realize. Um, and I just have some people who come to mind where I know the relationship was struggling at home, and it was affecting their work, and it was affecting their home life, and it was, and I just think, man, how different would it have been if they had their spouse had been supportive during that time, or
Mm-hmm.
they just were supporting each other. How much better would they have been doing? How much better would their life look now? And and so that's what drives us every day, is I think about that. I think about those people and how different their life would be if they knew the importance of this, of prioritizing that marriage relationship and what it does for you, your spouse, your kids, even your family, like your outside family and your friends. Even he was saying, he's like, what a different world we would live in if everyone was doing this and we all had this support at home.
Yeah. And I think there's so many people that they might excel at work. I know people personally that have gotten the big promotion, that have started to make the money that they kind of dreamt of, that they set out to make when they started. They turn around and they're sad and they're miserable inside because they don't have anybody to share it with, because they let their relationship slide so far that it's either in shambles or they're divorced. And here's the thing, man, we live in such a throwaway society, a society where as soon as things gets hard or we feel like they don't work, you just get rid of them. And it's almost like in today's society, divorce is celebrated. Divorce is something where people give me a high five, like, let me get a divorce coach, let me do all these things. But the reality is, because you lack self-awareness, because you didn't own up to the things in your relationship that you could have done to make better, and your spouse or ex-spouse in this case too, your relationship suffered and you had a divorce. That's where those personal goals really come into mind. But I want to challenge you guys to really go all in 2024. We know what it's like to be in the winter of your relationship. We also know what it's like to rally as a couple, to do the work, to own your stuff, and to move forward together at the same time. The transformation in our marriage is relatively quick to getting back into that good season because we both did it together. But if you're the only one fighting for your relationship right now, look, it's okay, but it's going to be tougher. I'm going to tell you that.
Mhm.
But at some point, somebody has to be adult enough to say, you know what? There's enough love here that's still remaining. We didn't get married to get divorced. We got married to spend a lifetime together, for better or for worse, through sickness and in health, till death do us part. It's time to get in the arena of our relationship and really fight for it. And when you can do that, and when you can stop playing small in your marriage, and when you can stop allowing your hurt and your pain and your frustration to get in front of the love that you have for that person that you chose to spend the rest of your life with, and you can just have this reset moment. Who cares who's right and wrong? Reset, move forward together, and find opportunities and the triggers and the emotions that are going to come up, because they will.
Well, something else I wanted to point out is, or contrary to what I said a minute ago, if you put all your focus, like you and Walt and I have both done this at different points in our relationship. We put all our focus into something we were trying to accomplish. Like for him, if say it was work, he was trying to reach that promotion and he was putting all his effort and focus into that promotion. But then you turn around and when you actually attain that thing, Now you don't have anybody to share it with because you didn't invest in the relationship and now they're not there anymore to celebrate it with you and you're alone. And we see a lot of people look at Tom Brady.
Just got divorced.
He was pushing for, he was at the pinnacle of his career and he could have went out on top and been there to celebrate it with his family. But instead, it wasn't enough and he kept pushing for more. And the next thing you know, he turned around and now he doesn't have the family to go back to. He doesn't
By the
have
way,
them to celebrate.
they didn't even win. He came back for another year and they sucked.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. He could have went on top then, but there probably at that point were issues with the relationship that were affecting him, and then he didn't show up.
Mm-hmm.
And then he ultimately quit anyway, except now he quit and he went back to being alone and not being able to celebrate that and enjoy it with his family. And that's what happens to us. Like, you know, I talked about it with Walt earlier as we were kind of prepping for this. And I had a point where I was at a low point for me. I was like feeling depressed and I was a new mom and I felt like I was failing as a mom and a wife. And I was, I got very emotional about it because it's still, that pain is never, it never goes away, obviously, but I try to look back on it more now as like it humbles me, but it doesn't I don't feel guilt or pain in the same way anymore. It's more of I still let it be there to let me never forget and humble me so that I don't make the same mistake again.
Because you learn from it, right?
Right.
So there's no regret.
Right. So at that time though, I felt very I just felt like I was failing in life and I needed a win. I needed something to help me feel happy. That's what I felt at the time. And I hadn't been able to finish my college degree. And it was always kind of lingering there for me as like an unfinished thing, another thing that feels like a failure. And at that time, I remember telling him, I kept trying to express to him how I felt, but obviously he can't know. Like he didn't have a baby, he didn't have the baby. He's not the mother. He's just never going to really understand what I'm feeling. But he could tell that I was feeling down and unhappy. And, he's trying to give me suggestions. And I finally told him, like, I feel like maybe I just need to go back to school and finish this degree so I can just have the degree and feel like I didn't waste all that time and money on something I don't have anything to show for.
Yeah, Steph had 8 classes left to finish her degree.
Yeah, and a lot of it, I kind of I didn't finish because I ultimately decided to move with Walt because, the Navy had started moving him around and I didn't want to be a part anymore. And every time I tried to go back to it, it just wasn't working out. And so I finally got to a point where I could have both kids could kind of be in school. Like our youngest finally got to where she could go to preschool. And I was like, well, now I could take the classes at least. And I just want to feel like I'm working towards something. I'm doing something. I need to have something I can, feel like I had a success.
Well, it was like an individual goal, right? Not a family goal. That was one of your individual goals.
But then in the process, I got so focused on attaining that, and it took a lot of work and effort, more than I even thought it would, because now I hadn't been in school in a decade. I'm older, my brain doesn't think the same way, so I felt like things that would have been a lot easier before just weren't. It felt very hard.
Different challenges at 30.
Yeah. And I know that then my focus got taken off of my family and I wasn't as present with them as I should have been at that time. And our relationship really suffered. And it was right before I was going into my last semester to graduate was when Walt and I had that come to Jesus moment in our relationship. And I literally thought we were going to end up getting a divorce. And I was sitting there like, oh my God, I'm at the last semester of this, but I'm about to lose my marriage. And that's going to affect my whole family, my kids, everybody, because I prioritized this over my family. And that was a really humbling moment for me. And every time I think about it, I get emotional because that was a real, real place and a real, real low moment in my life. And I've learned that this is the thing. We have to learn to have balance and learn that we can't necessarily prioritize one thing, and it should never come above your family.
Yeah, if you're gonna prioritize one thing, prioritize the thing that matters the most to you above all else, and that's your spouse. And that's your spouse. So look, we've given you guys some really solid examples of what the goals are, why you should prioritize them, and how you need to keep those those personal goals, and you need to keep those couple goals that everybody has. So what do you do? Like, how do you start this? I gave you guys a little snippet of that vision, right? It's sitting down and thinking to yourself from a spiritual perspective, a physical perspective, a relationship perspective, a financial perspective. If you have a business, maybe it's that too. Like, there's some major categories like those four that you should be able to build some goals around and then prioritize them. What you have to do is start to think about what that vision really looks like for you. Where do you see yourself at the beginning of 2025? That vision is going to morph and change, by the way, based upon what's happening around you. But right now, today, where can you see yourself? And then Stephanie said this, the value of writing it down. She talked about at the beginning. I didn't used to write them down. I had these big, audacious goals in my head and these grandiose visions of where I wanted to go. And I would talk about them a lot, but I wouldn't necessarily write them down. Writing them down does make a difference. One of the goals I had for this year was to make sure we got back and see Stephanie's family at Christmas time in North Carolina, and we live in Arizona. I actually forgot that I wrote that goal down, but I planted the seed when I wrote it. I should have revisited it more, but I saw it right before we went, and I thought, son of a gun, I actually did that goal. Like, I can't believe, like, I didn't even think about that I had written that down, and it was super cool to see because it shows you the value of it. So you've got this big macro goal, right? This big macro goal. If you just focus on the macro goal, you're going to start to feel overwhelmed probably. When I wrote my book, and it's Night Monsters in My House, a true story, shameless plug, #1 bestseller, 3,000 books sold. So when I wrote that, I thought, how am I going to get to 90 to 110,000 words to make this over 300 pages? It felt super daunting at first. What you need to do is, once you have your vision of what you want, you back into the how to. Okay, now what do I need to do to attain that goal? What are the executable things? For me, it was write 3,000 words every day until the book was done. Did I do that every day? No, but pretty close. Some days I write 5,000, right? Pretty close. And I was able to get that done in a pretty short period of time and stay true to the essence of what I wanted to try to build, was give people the belief that their history doesn't define their legacy. And they're one choice away from really living an extraordinary life, regardless of what they've been through. What I don't see people do is they might have the vision, they might write the goal down. They don't write the steps that are going to get them to the goal. And it's going to be important when we talk about the third step of this. You know, we talked about the why, we're talking about building your vision, and then back into the how to. Write down every single thing you think you need to do in order to attain that goal. Then you go back in and you can prioritize those things based upon what order they should be in, because everything's different. In your relationship, it could be a marriage workshop. It could be going to church. It could be praying together. It could be all these things to create the strongest version of your marriage possible. This is what I see when my wife and I look so in love when we start 2025, even though we're in a really tough spot right now. What are all the little things? Little hugs, little kisses, little I love yous, little you look beautifuls. All these things are going to make a huge difference on your ability to attain that goal. And without these things that you need to do, the how-tos, the executables, you won't achieve the goal. But if you don't start with the vision first and back into that, you're going to be missing where you ultimately wanted to go to. So it really does all work together, but it starts with the vision, and then you work it in reverse.
Yeah, so I don't know if we sorry, we've been a little over on this one, but our key points, like he said, I just want to reiterate, so if anybody got lost in that. The first key point was why you should prioritize and build goals for your relationship and yourself. He just talked about the second was build your vision first, then back into the how to. And he started to move into the third one, which is focus on micro versus macro things. And he made a good point about the book, how you got to set small goals that are like, I need to write this many words each day. It will finally get you to the big goal, which is the writing the book, which actually Walt and I are facing that right now because one of our goals this year is we're going to write a marriage book. So we're going to have to start doing this ourselves, where we're going to have to set little small micro goals that are going to get us to where we've actually written the book. Because trust me, there's a lot of this stuff that does feel very daunting.
Getting to 49 podcasts feels daunting. You got to do the first one first.
Yes. And the fourth one is celebrate the wins together. And we kind of just talked about that, how you don't want to get so focused on that macro goal and not be able to celebrate at the end with the people you love, because that's the best part. So it's not really fun to reach it when you don't have anybody to celebrate with at the end. And so I hope you kind of got that from my story. And, because I felt like, man, here I was about to reach that thing I had been shooting for and was like striving for. And it was such a big goal for me. And then I would have gotten there, but I would have lost my marriage and my family in the process. And so was it even worth it at that point? To me, no. So don't lose sight of the important things, striving for some of these big macro goals, and don't get overwhelmed in that to where you lose sight of all the important things in your life, like your family.
Yeah, and it's so cool if you think the kisses and the hugs and the I love yous and the text, how you doing today? Or the text like, hey, I respect you going to work every single day and working so hard for our family. Thank you for doing that, honey. Those are the little things. These are the micro things we're talking about. I think we put so much of a priority. People talk about self-care and talk about taking this giant vacation. People think they want to create an extraordinary marriage, and they think that going to Barbados or going to some beautiful exotic location is going to be the thing that fixes their marriage. They think going to the workshop is going to fix their marriage. That's not what's going to fix it. Those big things can put more money in that love bank that we talked about probably 15 episodes ago. But the little things, the daily deposits you're making into your love bank and your emotional account and your relationship are the things that's going to keep it on a really high level. Because the reality is life is going to happen. Things are going to get in the way of your relationship sometimes. And the more of a surplus you can be in your love bank and your account, the better prepared you are to weather those storms that are going to eventually hit your relationship, that hit every single one of us, that still do to us now. But because we built up our love bank, we don't stay in a negative place in our relationship. We work our way back out of that really quickly. I can't tell you how many people I've known, they finally get this couples only vacation. So excited to get this couples only vacation. Honey, I'm so glad. And we're going to do the white linen cloth, little food, dinner right on the beach right there. And it's going to be so romantic. And we need this so bad. But they haven't been doing any of the micro things. They haven't had the critical discussions that they needed to have before. Then they get on vacation and the husband gets mad at the wife because she's taking too long to get ready. And next thing you know, they're yelling at each other in the middle of this beautiful exotic location. And now they're pissed because they didn't do the micro things. They waited to do the big thing, thinking that was going to be an end all be all solve everything. That's not what solves and builds a powerful relationship. The micro things do. Then if you're doing the micro things when you go on the vacation, when we went to Niagara Falls, after I spoke last October, right? When we did all these other things as part of building our business and doing what we're doing, we had an incredibly wonderful time. It was so much freaking fun because we were doing the micro things.
Yeah, Walt just said it a few minutes ago about those micro things being like the kiss in the morning or the kiss goodnight and those hugs during the day. And those are all the little things and little deposits that are going to get you to where you're going to have that thriving relationship. But it takes all those little everyday things to get you to that point. And if you try to skip over that stuff and you're not doing any of that, and like he said, but then, you're going to go take this big trip together, like, well, you're not going to be in a good place to take that trip because you're not going to want to be around each other because you didn't do the little things that you needed to do every day. And, even he said, like, just the other day, I was yesterday, I think, he had texted me something and he's like, you never responded to that text.
That
And
was twice.
and it's true. I got distracted with other things and just didn't even realize, he's like, I did see it, but then totally forgot because I was looking at other stuff and got sidetracked. And so it's those kind of stupid little things, though, that it will lead to something. Because now he's like, why didn't you respond to that? Is she mad? Like, or, why am I not important enough to respond to? Or, you just start saying all these things to yourself in your mind when some little thing like that, and if you don't discuss it or you don't ask, you're going to have blown it out into something else in your mind that may have been nothing, so I'm just using this as an example because this is what I mean by it. It's really this little of things that, like, he sent me he went to lunch with somebody. He sent me a picture of the mural on the wall because he knows I love that stuff. And I didn't respond because I was like, I don't know. I think I was trying to order something online. Got sidetracked with that and didn't, and then just forgot and didn't go back to it. But he asked me about it later. So then he knew, like, okay, it wasn't a big deal, but
She loves cactuses. So it was like one of those moments where I'm like, oh, what a cool cactus mural right there. I don't really care. But I know that she likes it. Let me take a picture and send it to Steph. So I'm trying to do something micro,
right.
nice and romantic, and she didn't respond back to that. So I'm like, well, okay, I guess you mad that I'm out eating lunch with a buddy. But that's how things will atrophy in your relationship. And the micro things go, all the little resentments that build up, those little drips of resentment that turn into that fire hose, it works the same in reverse. The little things you do in your relationship will build so much love and so much unity between you and your spouse that you really will become an unstoppable force together. So those micro things, you got a choice, man. You're going to let them go negative or you're going to let them go positive. You're making the choice every single day, whether you think that you are or you're not. Have the self-awareness and start doing it different. Then you can celebrate those wins together. Maybe sometimes celebrating the win is just your spouse saying how much they enjoyed your text. Maybe that's a little win. Or maybe it is when you're on vacation, like, oh, I love you. This has been the best vacation of our lives. So much fun. Or the win is you guys taking a little drive together and just jamming out to the radio and just laughing and chuckling and having a big time. Celebrate the little wins together. Because if you don't celebrate the little wins, those big things that continue to just kick you in the behind in life will be the things that you end up focusing on. When you're celebrating the little wins, you're staying in gratitude. And we talked about a lot. It's hard to have an attitude when you got some gratitude for your spouse and you start to focus on the things your spouse is doing, how you guys are winning together. And it's like create some perpetual motion. It's the snowball effect, but in the most positive way. Versus when you don't celebrate and you're focusing on the negative, it's a snowball effect in a negative way.
And I just want to kind of leave you guys with another thing that I really took away when we were at that come to Jesus moment and we started to rebuild back the relationship. And I tried to really think, like, well, how do I start doing this? Where do I go from here? Like, how do you even rebuild after you get that low and it's hard to see good sometimes? Like, you get so negative about your spouse that you start to struggle to even find any good. And you come back to the little things. And I will never forget, and through that process, I realized just how important, everybody says that, it's really the little things. And sometimes we don't really know what that means, but I realized it really was like, I was like, whoa, we got away from, holding hands and how much that I didn't realize how much that actually meant for me. Or like I've brought it up before where like that kiss in the morning, like just even if I was asleep, I was like, just let me know that, I don't know, just like you thought of me. And it really is those little things just to say you were thinking about them, or even like the text, I love you, or just, it really is those little things. And when you stop doing those, it builds up and little by little, you lose connection and you get further apart. And it really is a slow trickle process. So, like he said, a lot of people get to this point and they're just like, what happened to us? Or how did we get here? They don't even know because it was such small things over time that consistently over time you didn't do that led to you getting to that place where now you don't even know each other. And so it's the same, just like we're saying, like to attain the goal, you have to do these little things, these little micro things in the everyday that get you to the big goal. It's the same. If you don't do them, you will get further and further away from it. And I think that's where we really learned like just how important those little daily, and even for, I could use almost any example, but for instance, for my fitness goal, there was a time where Walt and I had real success in weight loss. And we realized it was the small everyday things that we were very dedicated to and consistent in. It was, we got up early and did a workout every single day for 6 days a week for 3 months straight. It was the diet, the same boring diet, but every single day, we allowed ourselves one cheat day, but we stuck to it. And doing that consistently was what got us to the goal. And we've realized ever since we're still fighting for that, like to do that same thing again. But it all comes down to the discipline and consistency with any goal. It doesn't matter what it is. Like he said, writing the book, that was a big goal that is very daunting if you just like, oh my God, how do I write 3,000 words? Well, it starts by writing a few every day, even if it's not even the same amount, but you just do something small every day, you will get to it. It's just staying consistent. And it's the same with your relationship. It's those little things in the everyday, making that little bit of effort every day that's going to get you to a thriving relationship.
They say the journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step.
Yes.
That's what we're talking about. Look, guys, here's the reality. 2024 is happening. 2023 is over. You can't go back and change anything that happened in 2023. What you can do is you can stop playing small in your relationship. You can stop making excuses and you can start doing the micro things. You can build a vision for your relationship. You can create the incredible family I know each and every of you want out there. You can create the incredible marriage I know each and every one of you want out there. Because at the end of 2024, beginning of 2025, you're going to be sitting here listening to us again, talk about goals again, and you're going to be sitting there with regret of why you didn't make the choice to do some of the things that we're talking about today and do the hard things and not letting your emotions get in the way of that, but letting them elevate where you're going. Or you're going to start 2025 and think, man, what a hell of a year. What a great year. I am so proud of the changes that I've made, of the goals that I've hit, of where my relationship is at. And I can't wait to see what it looks like at the beginning of 2026. It's time. Stop playing small and go get it. So look, guys, another way to commit to building your marriage and family is go to legacydrivenmarriages.com. Hello, legacydrivenmarriages.com, and sign up for our weekly newsletter. It's going to include weekly marriage tips and true tactical advice, just like you get from this podcast, that you can use to become the power couple that you've always wanted to be, that your heart says is still possible. Don't delay. As soon as you're done with this, go to legacydrivenmarriages.com, sign up for our newsletter. You'll get some updates about the book they're writing, get some update about some workshops, working on some big things in corporate America and on military bases, and actually in some churches now, on us going and delivering some conferences and workshops in 2024. But look, thanks again for being here. 2024 is here. Let's go out and get it, man. Let's stop playing around. I'm hyped up. I hope you're hyped up too. But until the next time,
get into the arena of your marriage keep fighting for your relationship, and keep elevating your generational legacy. And we'll see you guys next Tuesday.